Welcome to Scorched Earth and a general reading for the sign of Aries, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of November 2024. I hope you're well, and apologies for these being so late coming out. It was a combination of an emergency house rewire that had to happen, which meant that I could not work because no internet, no electricity, and also feeling considerably under the weather for the last few days. I'm feeling a little bit better, so thank you for your patience. I very much appreciate you. I'm sorry it was kind of unavoidable. So, before we begin, if the reading resonates with you and you would like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That is via the first link in the description box below. The second link in the description box will take you to my private community, which is the Order of the Phoenix over on the Circle platform. There you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost beyond the membership fee, and hang out with an extraordinary group of people. So if that's something that sounds like it might be of interest to you, you know what to do with those links. Right, Aries, let's flip you around, as it were, and see what's going on with you. Could I have 3 cards for Aries, please? First one is the 4 of Cups. I don't know if that counts as a stalker card for you, Aries, because it's come up a lot in the last year. Current energy, please, for Aries. Thank you. Ooh, distinct improvement. We have the Magician, and what about what's coming towards Aries, please? Ooh, we have the Hanged Man and the 8 of Swords. Right, okay. And we have the 5 of Swords at the bottom of the deck. Essentially, if we can kind of like skip to the end, what this is saying here, Aries, is that the problems that you are facing right now, if you should be finding yourself facing issues, are largely down to the way that you are thinking about them. Now, we have 2 indications of what that would be. It's this November, very strong November energy here, but we will get into it in a minute once I've got some clarifiers out on the table. In fact, all 3 cards here are speaking to that. Tell me about this 4 of Cups, please. Thank you. Oh, Moon sideways too. And we've got the Strength card. I'm going to take that as a sideways card, so you might have been feeling a bit sideways with yourself. Tell me about the Magician. Why is that here for? Whoa, okay. We've got an absolute shit show. We've got of cards, that is, not the content of the cards, but the number of them. We've got the 3 of Pentacles, the Justice card, the Ace of Pentacles, and the 9 of Swords. Tell me about the Hanged Man and the 8 of Swords, please. Jesus. Why is the Hanged Man and the 8 of Swords here? Okay. I have the 7 of Wands reversed, and we have the 3 of Wands. Right, Page of Cups is at the bottom of the deck here, and I think this is making all kinds of sense. I've actually done a few readings for Aries people recently, and I honestly can't remember if there's been a theme of what's been popping up for them versus what we're seeing going on here. Possibly, more than likely, but can I bring it to mind right now? So we start off over here in the recent past with your 4 of Cups. Now we notice that's kind of sitting sideways, and I have a couple of different ways that I interpret sideways presenting cards. Sometimes they indicate an energy that is flipping from, upright to reversed, or vice versa, in which case then what we're catching is something in the act of transition. Or we can be speaking to energies that are present but are not yet fully activating. And I do think that possibly what we've got going on here is echoes of stuff from the past that sort of seem to be resurfacing somewhat, but not to the same extent that you have experienced them before. The 4 of Cups for me can speak to a lot of things. I mean, quite often what I go back to is abandonment issues, and that's been something that's been coming up a lot for Aries over the course of this year. Now, at the point of recording this, I do believe we are, although we may not be in the Mars retrograde yet, we're certainly in the shadow phase. So Mars being your ruling planet means that essentially he's slowing down. All right, he might be in the sign of Leo, and that might be all good and proper and whatnot, but like he's slowing down, he's losing his effectiveness, he's getting ready to station retrograde. And then we have quite a period of time, considerable period of time actually, where he is going to be moving backwards. Now, in that sort of situation, what we can expect is things coming up, things that have been perhaps not fully dealt with yet, things that need going over again. Remember, the retrograde motion is an opportunity to kind of dot the I's and cross the T's on situations that you have already been through. Now, as frustrating as that might be, what we've got here is kind of like a simmering of something. And it might be a simmering of something that's been shifting, right? We caught it in this point of transition, or it could be simply just letting you know that it's still there in some way or another. Now, the two clarifying cards are quite interesting because we have the Moon and we have the Strength card. Now, the Strength card represents Leo, which is your sister fire sign. It talks about personal growth, it talks about strength, obviously. But it talks about personal power as well, right? And the expansion of oneself to become bigger than the problems that we face. When that's showing up here, it's like the strength is present, but it's not fully active. And the reason for that could likely be the fact that we just simply don't know where, what's the best way to put it? Quite often, when we're in difficult situations, we don't really know where we get the strength from to deal with those. We just find it somewhere, right? And even if we're kind of crawling along on our hands and our knees, at some point we look back and go, I don't know how I kept going in all of that. Now, I don't feel like the situation that you have been in has been as dire as that, but certainly it doesn't feel to me like there's a conscious awareness of where your strength is, and maybe you may not be consciously feeling your own strength with this card here. The Moon on its side is also interesting because when we talk about it this way round, well, let's start here. For me, the Moon represents the subconscious, right? The deep workings of our mind that quite often we're unaware of, because it's all happening below the level of the conscious mind. But it can also talk about things that are obscured, right? There's quite an illusory nature to the Moon. When we see the Moon showing up like this, what we have is things coming to light. We have secrets revealed. And again, it's coming up on its side, which gives everything a kind of... It feels like situations are sort of opaque in so much as what we're dealing with, but also, you know, what we're dealing with inside. The things that are outside of us that we're trying to deal with, but also the things that are inside of us. It's like if we could see the edges of what they actually were, then we'd be able to deal with them, but they're kind of fuzzy, they're not defined, and so it's kind of difficult to get a grasp on what it is that is happening. And this fuzziness seems to be happening all around here in your recent past. And when we come to your current energy, we have the Magician. And I think in the first instance, what we've got here is a huge desire for change. And perhaps it is that you've recognised that some aspect of the fuzziness is possibly something to do with the way that you've been thinking about it, right? And you'll notice that we're kind of tying in with future energy here too. And so there is, in the first instance, right in front of you, this kind of desire to manifest a different kind of existence for yourself. But I feel like you've been running up against a wall a little bit, because we've got this Three of Pentacles here and the Justice card and the Ace of Pentacles. And there's a stepping back with the Pentacles card. So the Three of Pentacles is about cooperation and collaboration. It's about teamwork. It's about working together with other people. In the first instance, it could be actually speaking about the way that you are working together with yourself, if we count, you know, the subconscious part of you as something that is not necessarily directly involved, at least to your conscious mind, in making the decisions about how you move forwards, right? But this Justice card here puts quite an interesting spin on things, because it says to me, whether you realise it or not, actually where you are right now is incredibly important. Now, when we talk about the Justice card, obviously we're talking about themes of balance and alignment and pulling everything together. And it could be that you've been trying to pull together your community in some sort of way, right? Like, let's build, let's do something. You could see that how the Three of Pentacles would speak to that. But the Justice card also talks about questions of fairness. And more importantly, I feel at this point, it's talking about you sitting at a critical point. And the funny thing is that about the way that I'm looking at this is it feels to me like you're aware that there is a decision that needs to be made, right? There's some sort of, kind of karmic twist in the road that you've arrived at, where you understand the importance of change and doing things differently. But the real issue here is somewhat back from where you perceive the change to be. I don't know if I'm explaining that terribly well. Look, there are lots of ways of interpreting these cards, and actually, at least one of the interpretations of the cards could be pretty relevant for you if you are on one particular side of the political spectrum in a particular country right now. Let's put it like that, and so this Three of Pentacles and Ace of Pentacles with the Magician card could be an attempt to organise in a way that counterbalances what feels very difficult at the moment. But the energy of the Nine of Swords is a really important one to understand, because it's the only swords card that shows the swords presented horizontally, right? There is a neutrality to these swords. And so the meaning of the Nine of Swords comes then to be perspective. To what degree are we holding perspective within our own minds? Now, I want to pull up this here, because there's a desire to start afresh, right? There's a desire to create some sort of new seed, new cycle for yourself here. But it's plagued with this Nine of Swords energy. Now, this could be anxiety, this could be fear that you're not enough, you don't have enough, it could be lots of these sorts of things. And it's put you at a really interesting crossroads. But like I said, I feel like you think you're here and you've got to choose between this way and this way. And whether you're further on or further back than you think you are, it's like the issue is actually sideways of what you think it is. And it could be that there's some catastrophization going on, right? Because that would be very much the energy of the Nine of Swords. It's like deep anxiety, deep concern, deep worry, a potential loss of perspective that comes when we catastrophize things. But there's a huge issue here around working out what it is that is yours to control. Now, we've got the King of Pentacles there, which I think is a really good card, given the other ones that we've seen here on the table. And we've got the Ten of Pentacles. Interesting. I've been waiting for this card. It's the Tower. I kind of knew it was coming out for Aries this month. Thought it was going to come out in the extended. Now, between the King of Pentacles and the Ten of Pentacles, what we have here is concern over stability, long-term stability, long-term security. And as we can see, there's kind of like a stepping back, bringing it back to basics. What do we need to invest in time, in terms of our time and energy, maybe our money, possibly too, in order to create the best outcome for ourselves. Like, this is what I'm seeing here in the cards. But between the Tower and the Nine of Swords, there is an element of catastrophe here. And I would... The Nine of Swords gives it... enables us to question whether this is catastrophization or whether this is a realistic view of what is going on at the moment. The Tower gives it more of a kind of seismic quality that is saying, yeah, you actually do need to be thinking about this, right? But at the same time, the Tower is very positive, and the Tower does represent some sort of 90-degree turn that we might not have taken otherwise. So between the Tower and the Magician card, and in those, just simply in the Magician card already, I felt like there was some sort of change that you were trying to bring in. There was some sort of new direction that you were trying to go in. And I do think at this point it's kind of reactive rather than proactive. But now also with the Tower, with the Justice card, and with these two longer term plan, well, three actually, all three of these, in terms of what is going to be the most secure route for you, what is going to be the most secure plan for you in terms of your long-term safety, long-term security, long-term stability, in terms of resources and all other things. You seem to be under a lot of stress to make a change now. And as we're going into a Mars retrograde, I can't remember off the top of my head when it actually starts, but I do know that we're in the shadow period now, and there's quite a long shadow period to run up to it. The decisions made now may not necessarily be the right ones, right? It's a kind of knee-jerk reaction to this. And when we come into your energy in November proper, we've got the Hangman and the Eight of Swords. And I really do feel like these cards are counselling that we have to make sure that we have... we're keeping perspective before we make any decisions. Now, the Hangman is not an active card at all. It is, in fact, the most passive card in the tarot. And this is about suspending yourself upside down where you're uncomfortable so that you can observe from a different perspective what might be going on. Now, I think it's interesting that we go from the Nine of Swords to the Eight of Swords here. There's a lot of stress around the idea of resources. There's a lot of stress around long-term plans and all those sorts of things here. But here in November, we see a step back. Is it the way that we are thinking about the situation that is causing the problem, or is actually there a problem here? And I think for the most part, Aries will be working out for themselves over the course of this month that there is a lot of catastrophization and mental energy that has gone into creating what has felt like an intractable situation. The Magician card here should speak to the ability to be able to create the life that you want, right? It's literally a card of manifestation. You will it, and so it becomes it. Very Aries kind of levels of willpower. And the Justice card. Feels like a need to try and do what is right. But I can't look at the Ace of Pentacles without seeing the Nine of Swords there too. And what that's saying is there's such considerable stress around what that looks like for you. That in November, it almost feels like you need to slow down. Fire signs don't, in a lot of ways, don't like Earth energy. It moves very fucking slowly, and it doesn't really... It can make fire signs feel really quite suffocated. But at the same time, the mind seems to be sprinting ahead. And the moving down from Nine of Swords to Eight of Swords feels to me like it's giving you the opportunity to kind of sit with your emotions a little bit and see how much of this is actually this self-sabotaging panic behavior or panicked thinking, panicked loss of perspective that can help you kind of restructure. I guess restructuring is what I'm seeing going on here in November, because the Eight of Swords, although it's a card that everybody fucking hates, I actually love it when this card shows up, because it is the problem and the solution all in one energy, and it really very much depends on how you look at it, a bit like the Nine of Swords here, for you to be able to see whether what is going on is chaos or potential. All right, so with the Eight of Swords, we feel trapped, we feel stuck, we don't feel like we know which is the best way forward. And although there's quite a lot of stress around what might be the right way forward here, and maybe an abortive attempt or two to try and get something off the ground that isn't necessarily working, here we can say, all right, it is okay to take a step back from this situation right now. There is not an immediate response that is required for me to be able to get through this situation. I need to be more measured about the way that I am doing things, because doing is possible in November. It's not like you've got to sit on your hands and just wait things out. But it is important to make sure that you are taking in all of the right kind of information and not coming from a place that is highly reactive, right? This is very difficult for Aries, but because something about the way that you are thinking about this is making this situation feel more urgent than it actually is. We see that here in the Jupiter and Gemini card, right? Whatever Jupiter touches, it expands. So if we're feeling insecure, if we're feeling concerned, if we feel like there's a problem and we feel stuck and we feel trapped, and Jupiter will make that feel worse. This is saying, stop wriggling for a second, stop reacting. Just take a look at what the situation actually is. Look outside the window. What does that look like to you right now? I mean, it might be a good month for you if you felt like you were able to, Aries, to withdraw from social media, give yourself a bit of breathing space, because your mind feels like it's locking you up tight at the moment. But we also have the capacity here this month for you to be able to just kind of breathe your way through it, right? More easily just feel your way through by way of reference to what is actually outside your window rather than what's been deposited into your head. Because we see this Three of Wands here. This is, like I said, it's a card of movement, generally speaking. It's an Aries card. But certainly in the case of this deck, we see the man kind of stood on quite a high piece of land looking out over the bay. We've got ships down here and stuff like that, and some readers will tell you that he's overseeing his fleet going out. Some may say he's waiting for his ships to come back in, but for me he seems very much more like he's looking at the lay of the land and the lay of the sea, whatever it is. And these two wands here may be fixed as they are into the ground, but he's got his hand on this one, and the implication is that one can pick up and that one can move somewhere else, right? So within the three, what we have is actually two energies of both initiation, Ace of Wands, and Two of Wands. What are we going to do? Where are we going to go? What we're going to engage in? What we're going to experience? All these sorts of things, right? It's not simply about movement. It's the combination of initiation and contemplation. All of these are speaking to not trying to act for acting's sake, but kind of taking a step back and taking the longer view of where you want to go, what you want to do, and whatnot, and coming at it from a place that is not dictated by a fear or a need to defend yourself, a perceived need to defend yourself. Because when the Seven of Wands shows up in the reverse, it's saying defense is not necessary. Let's take a look at that card the right way up there a second. What we see there is a man with a wand in his hand, and he's fighting off these other, 6 wands here. They are effectively invisible assailants. We really do have no idea what is actually going on here. And you know, one way of looking at it is to say he's fighting from the moral high ground, right? He literally has the upper hand as far as well, there's often a moral component that's thrown into this card, which is quite interesting, right? But this is where the interpretation of this being a defensive or guarded energy comes from, because we don't actually know whether he is being attacked or whether those ones are simply, like these ones here, plonked into the earth. And what he's done is he's misread the situation from his elevated vantage point there and decided that this means that there are people on the other end of those sticks who are coming to attack him. Now we see other interpretations of this card sometimes, and there's someone, someone will have a child pushed behind them and all that sort of thing. And then we get this more protective kind of energy. And they're ever so slightly different. Defensive and protective, I think they're different things. Very, very closely related, but quite different. So when this card shows up that way round, what we're saying is there is no need for defences, there is no need to be guarded, there is no need to be protective or offensive or any of these things. Interesting, like I did a Energies of the Week Ahead video for the YouTube membership that's up on that's up now. And the energies for this coming week, and I'm recording this on the 10th, so we're talking about the 11th through to the 18th. Spoke in a very similar way. It's in so much as it's the energies of this week, this coming week. And I'm going to mention it here because I do think it's relevant, because it is the astrology of the rest of this month is kind of ass, to be honest. It was all fire and swords, right? It was all wands and swords. Now, when those two get together, they're hyping the fuck out of each other, and what you end up with is a wildfire. And there was a lot to speak of division around that, right? So the best thing that we can do is realise that we ourselves are not under attack and put our wands down. Just for a moment while we regain perspective. Because if we are, in our own minds, blowing up the situation to be something bigger than it is, and we are coming at things from a place of fear, which we are if we are defensive and guarded and all those kind of things, then we are not likely to be making good decisions, utilising good judgment about where we need to go next, what we need to do. This is talking about slow movement, but it's talking about, starting some sort of consideration of a slower movement, one that is much more thorough and effective than knee-jerk. And as far as the tower goes, I think that the biggest tower is the realization that you get to decide how you respond to something, rather than that being something that you have no control over. Now, in the first instance, Aries, that definitely speaks to you growing more powerful as a person, because it's part of the Aries archetype is just that kind of hot-headed rage, right? And that's, you've cut and chopped and sliced everything up before you truly really had a chance to calm down. If you give yourself that chance to calm down, you can see actually that your warrior energy was not needed in this particular situation, and maybe you should actually step away from that, because it's not part of your thing. I'm talking actually very broadly here. I'm not talking about a specific situation. The introduction of that willingness to wait before acting is a representation of a maturation of Aries energy. Now, if we were talking about a much slower energy, such as Taurus, for example, what we would be seeing there is just more of a continuation of what is, a characterization of their sign anyway, right? Which is that slow movement, consider stuff before you do anything. And actually, maturation of the sign for Taurus would be realizing when it is time to act and do that, rather than sitting on the fence with it for, a year, 2 years, 3 years before they do anything about it, if they ever do. So please don't think I'm picking on you, because I'm not. Like, there's something else in this Tower card that I think is really powerful, right? When I first got this deck, and I was going through it, and I looked at the number, and I was like, 16. That means that's the Tower. What the fuck? That's a bit of a shit Tower. And then I realised, right, that this is actually the picture. As we look at it like this, it's the cat that gives it away, right? And what we've got here is a feeling that the world has flipped out from underneath us. We've got a feeling that we're not on solid ground anymore. It's funny. I remember passing out at a gig once. It was at a metal gig. And I was stood at the bar trying to get a glass of water. I've been stood there for ages. Just massively fucking overheated, actually, is what it was. Who was I seeing? Can't remember. Oh, fucking hell. Some metal band in the 90s anyway. And the best way I can describe what happened to me was the floor came up and hit me in the head. Like, that's exactly how it fucking felt. The floor came up and hit me in the head. I didn't move. It did that. And that's what I always think of when I see this card. It's like the whole world just fucking tilted 45 degrees on you. But did it actually? Or do you just need a little bit of time to readjust, reassess, do all of those kind of preparing for retrograde things going on? Because like I said, I feel like the biggest Tower here for you is the realization that you get to choose how you respond to it. So rather than seeing red and hacking and chopping and slicing and all that kind of thing, actually what we've got going on here is well, I understand that I feel like my life just took a 50-degree tilt to the right, but realistically, did it actually do that? And how can I control how I feel about these things so that I can bring myself back upright? Right? This represents a change of direction for you, and I think it's less to do with the type of change of direction that you feel like you need to be undertaking right now. I hope this is making sense to you, Aries, because we're kind of traversing around a little bit here. We're covering quite a bit of ground, as it were. But I would say for you, November is about the attempt to retain your peace, or at least claw it back in some sort of meaningful way. And if you have to tell yourself literally out loud over and over again, I am not under attack right now, I am safe, then that probably is something that you should do. Because we want movement, we want some sort of action, we want it initiated, but we also want it considered. Ace of Wands, Two of Wands. And it needs to come from a place of not being defensive or guarded, but actual genuine movement forwards. Again, there's a little bit of unpicking of a particular set of things that are going on in your brain at the moment. And I do think, even though, and this is kind of important, even though we do have Mercury going into retrograde, is it going into retrograde shadow or going into retrograde? I don't know. On the 25th of November anyway, so we'll certainly be thinking about it around that sort of time. I do actually think that you end the month with considerably more clarity than you started it, even with that retrograde energy active, which I think is fascinating. So I'm going to go over to the extended now. You're very welcome to join me over there if you would like to do so. You can do that on Circle, or you can do that on Vimeo. Either place would be cool. I'd be delighted to see you in either place. And we'll look into this a little bit more deeply, because it feels to me like there's a lot can be very powerfully shifted internally this month. It's a little less about what's going on outside of you and a little bit more about what's going on inside of you. And I think so here's the thing, I think if anybody's hoping that the tension is going to subside, I can't say that I see that happening. And I feel like this is the run-up now to 2025. And 2025 is just full It's absolutely chocker of this kind of energy. So we get to the point of being very able, very powerfully able to take a minute to hesitate just long enough to unpick our mental processes before we settle on some sort of movement forward that would stand you in very good stead for what happens next year, and even actually the year after. I mean, there's a lot of planets going into your sign next year, Aries. So there's going to be some there's going to be some sort of effect on you, for sure. You get to breathe a sigh of relief of the North Node being out of your sign, and for Neptune to be going into your sign, and Saturn will be going into your sign. Is there anything else? I don't know. Possibly not. But these are big energies, big generational planet energies. Not Saturn, but Neptune for sure. And I think if you want to be able to hit the ground running next year, you've got to really get a lid on these things. Recognise them as they start to arise and work very deliberately with them rather than trying to force outcomes outside of you. And I know that's frustrating. I'm well aware that that's frustrating, but it doesn't change the message, So, and I leave it there. Know that I love you all very, very much, and I'll see you soon.